It was a morning like any other at Buckingham Palace, the kind where the sun barely glinted off the gilded edges of the royal gates and the ceremonial guards stood in their familiar, immovable silence. Yet, behind the pristine curtains and polished halls, a storm was quietly brewing, a storm that would shake the very foundation of the royal family and send shockwaves across the globe. No one outside the palace could have anticipated what was about to unfold, but those who follow the monarchy closely sensed the tension simmering just beneath the surface. A decision had been made, one that would forever alter the lives of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle and redefine their place in history. The news broke with the subtlety of a cannon shot. Prince William had officially signed off on a revocation of the HRH titles for Harry and Meghan. But this was not a temporary measure, nor was it a mere formality meant to distance them from ceremonial duties. This was a declaration of permanent exile, a move that cemented their removal from the monarchy and extended even to their children, Archie and Lilibet. For the first time in modern royal history, a duke and duchess, born into privilege and protected by centuries of tradition, were stripped of the titles that symbolized not just rank, but identity, respect, and belonging. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. The significance of this cannot be overstated. The HRH title, His or Her Royal Highness, is more than a collection of letters. It is the embodiment of centuries of tradition, a mark of trust and responsibility within the monarchy. To be called HRH is to carry the weight of history, the expectations of service, and the implicit duty to uphold the values and image of the crown. When these titles are removed, it is not simply a matter of nomenclature. It is a public statement, an unmistakable declaration that someone has fallen out of favor, that they are no longer considered part of the inner sanctum, no longer a custodian of royal legacy. For Harry and Meghan, who had already distanced themselves from royal obligations and sought a life largely outside the public eye, this development was not merely a headline. It was a definitive turning point. The reactions were instantaneous. Within minutes, the news splashed across every major news outlet, from London to Los Angeles, from Sydney to Toronto. Social media erupted with speculation, criticism, and sympathy. Royal watchers dissected every angle. Historians debated the precedent, and ordinary citizens voiced their shock and curiosity. How did it come to this? What would become of Harry and Meghan? And most importantly, what did this mean for their children, born into a legacy now officially curtailed before they had even begun to understand it? To understand the weight of this decision, one must first grasp the complex web of relationships, rivalries, and expectations that define the royal family. Prince William, the eldest son of King Charles and heir apparent to the throne, carries responsibilities far beyond those of any ordinary citizen. From a young age, he was groomed to embody the monarchy itself, to be the face of continuity, stability, and tradition. Every action he takes, every decision he makes, is scrutinized not only by the public, but also by the intricate network of advisors, courtiers, and family members who surround him. To strip his younger brother and sister-in-law of their HRH titles was not a casual gesture. It was a calculated decision, likely influenced by months, if not years, of consultation, internal debate, and observation. Harry and Meghan's journey to this point has been marked by controversy, ambition, and a desire for independence. From the outset, Meghan Markle's entrance into the royal family was seen as revolutionary. A Hollywood actress with a strong personality and a global platform, she was unlike any royal consort the family had seen in decades. Her marriage to Harry was celebrated internationally, framed as a symbol of modernization, diversity, and new beginnings for the monarchy. Yet, beneath the glamour and public ceremonies, tensions quietly built. Conflicts over media scrutiny, perceived inequities in treatment, and disagreements over public roles created fissures that, over time, became impossible to ignore. The Sussexes' decision to step back from royal duties was already unprecedented, but it did not signal the end of scrutiny. It only intensified it. The palace, historically adept at managing appearances, was suddenly faced with a dilemma that could not be smoothed over by press releases or controlled photo opportunities. The question at hand was not just about titles. It was about authority, precedent, and the message sent to the world. If the monarchy allowed Harry and Meghan to maintain their HRH styles despite stepping away from duties, it would suggest that status could be retained without responsibility, a notion fundamentally at odds with centuries of royal practice. Conversely, revoking the titles permanently sent a clear signal. Membership in the royal family is not a matter of desire or popularity. It is a matter of duty, loyalty, and adherence to tradition. Inside the palace, the atmosphere was reportedly tense. Advisors debated the timing, weighing public perception against internal precedent. Would the public perceive this as a necessary step to protect the monarchy's integrity, or as an excessively harsh punishment? Sources close to the family indicated that King Charles and Queen Camilla were supportive of William's decision, recognizing the need to assert clarity and consistency within the royal ranks. For William, this was a matter of principle as much as it was personal. By drawing a definitive line regarding HRH titles, he was establishing a precedent that would guide future generations, ensuring that the monarchy retained its authority and credibility even as it evolved to meet modern expectations. The impact on Harry and Meghan's children is particularly profound. Archie and Lilibet, still very young, are now part of a lineage officially marked by exclusion. Titles and styles carry more than symbolic weight. They dictate access to royal privileges, ceremonial roles, and even the way the family is perceived by the public. By extending the revocation to their children, William has essentially defined the Sussex lineage as permanently outside the formal hierarchy of the monarchy. This raises questions about identity, opportunity, and public perception, as the next generation of Sussexes will grow up under the shadow of a decision made by their uncle before they are old enough to understand it fully. But the story does not end with titles. There are broader implications for finances, security, and public engagements. As HRH styles are intertwined with official duties, their removal affects the couple's relationship with royal funding, patronages, and ceremonial responsibilities. Meghan and Harry, already financially independent to an extent, must now navigate a landscape where public expectations, media scrutiny, and personal ambition intersect in unpredictable ways. The monarchy, in asserting authority, has effectively redefined the terms under which the Sussexes operate, creating a scenario ripe for further drama, speculation, and possibly confrontation. For the general public, the news is both sensational and unsettling. Royal families have always occupied a unique place in society, serving as symbols of continuity and tradition while also adapting to changing cultural norms. The removal of HRH titles is a stark reminder that even in the modern era, the monarchy retains the power to enforce hierarchy, discipline, and expectation. It also highlights the precarious balance between personal choice and institutional obligation, a balance that Harry and Meghan sought to redefine, only to find that tradition and authority remained remarkably resilient. As we prepare to explore the full story in this video, it is essential to consider the many layers at play. We will examine the official documents and statements, analyze the historical significance of HRH revocation, and delve into the personal and emotional reactions from all involved parties. We will speak to royal experts, psychologists, and insiders to uncover not only the immediate consequences, but also the long-term ripple effects on the monarchy, the public, and Harry and Meghan themselves. Along the way, we will confront questions that go beyond titles and ceremonies. What does it truly mean to be part of the royal family? How does one navigate personal ambition against the weight of centuries-old expectation? And perhaps most importantly, what can the world learn from this unprecedented move by Prince William? By the end of this video, you will have a clear understanding of the monumental significance of William's decision, the intricate dynamics that led to it, and the personal and historical consequences that will follow. This is not merely a story about letters after a name or the shifting roles of a royal couple. It is a story about power, responsibility, and the enduring tension between personal choice and institutional duty. It is a story that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about the monarchy, about family loyalty, and about the delicate dance between privilege and obligation that defines one of the most famous families in the world. And as the palace gates close behind the announcement, the world watches, wondering what comes next, who will adapt, who will resist, and who will ultimately define the future of the Sussex legacy. The news broke quietly at first, almost like a whisper slipping through the corridors of Buckingham Palace. But within moments, the ripple spread, crashing through newsrooms, royal blogs, and social media platforms with the force of a tidal wave. On a crisp morning, courtiers and palace staff received an official communiqué from the office of Prince William, Duke of Cambridge, and it contained words that would reshape the perception of the monarchy for years to come. The HRH titles of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle were permanently revoked. But it was not merely the language that shocked observers. It was the irrevocable nature of the decision, the clarity and finality embedded in every carefully chosen phrase. The statement, concise yet unequivocal, read in part, "The Duke and Duchess of Sussex are no longer entitled to use the style of His or Her Royal Highness. This decision is permanent and extends to their children, Archie Harrison and Lilibet Diana. The Duke and Duchess may retain their ducal titles, but these are no longer accompanied by the privileges, styles, or formal responsibilities associated with the HRH designation." To the untrained eye, it may have seemed like a simple bureaucratic update, a procedural adjustment to titles and forms of address. But anyone with even a cursory understanding of royal protocol knew this was a seismic event. HRH titles are not granted lightly. They represent a formal acknowledgement of membership within the royal family, a recognition that carries both privilege and responsibility. To remove them permanently is to remove the very framework that defines one's identity within the institution. For Harry and Meghan, this was more than symbolic. It was a complete redefinition of their status in the eyes of the monarchy and the public alike. The manner in which the announcement was released added to the shock. Unlike previous royal communications, which often employ layers of formality, press briefings, and meticulously staged photographs, this announcement was delivered with an economy of words, devoid of flourish but heavy with consequence. There was no preamble, no attempt to soften the blow. The message landed with the impact of a gavel striking a bench in a courtroom. Courtiers reported an unusual quiet following the release, a solemn acknowledgement that the decision would reverberate far beyond the gilded halls of Buckingham Palace. Within minutes, news outlets across the world had picked up the story. The timing was critical. Early morning in London, late night in Los Angeles, ensuring that both British and American audiences would wake up to the same headline. The phrasing of the announcement left little room for speculation. There would be no reinstatement of the HRH titles, no negotiation, and no compromise. For those who had been following the Sussex's journey from royal newcomers to international celebrities, this was a dramatic confirmation of the widening rift between the siblings and a formal assertion of William's authority over the family's internal hierarchy. Inside Buckingham Palace, reactions were mixed but tightly controlled. Sources close to the King and Queen confirmed that they were informed prior to the release and were supportive of the decision. Prince William, described as resolute and composed, had consulted extensively with senior advisors, legal counsel, and the Privy Council to ensure that the announcement would withstand scrutiny, both publicly and legally. The language was deliberate, leaving no ambiguity about the permanence of the revocation and the extension of the measure to Harry and Meghan's children. The impact on media coverage was immediate. Headlines screamed of royal betrayal, family discord, and unprecedented punishment. Analysts dissected every word of the announcement, parsing the implications for the monarchy, for Harry and Meghan, and for the royal family's public image. Social media erupted with speculation, criticism, and commentary, as millions of followers debated the fairness of the decision. Was it a necessary enforcement of tradition, or a vindictive act driven by personal tension between brothers? Could Harry and Meghan appeal, or were they truly bound by a decision that would define their relationship with the monarchy for generations to come? Public sentiment was divided. Traditionalists hailed William's move as a firm stand to protect the integrity of the monarchy, emphasizing the necessity of titles being accompanied by duty and service. For them, the HRH designation was not merely ceremonial. It was an embodiment of centuries of responsibility and accountability. Meanwhile, supporters of Harry and Meghan saw the revocation as harsh and punitive, interpreting the decision as a deliberate attempt to diminish their status and influence. The narrative quickly evolved into a global debate on privilege, family loyalty, and the evolving nature of royal life in the modern era. The announcement also raised immediate questions about ceremonial roles and formal obligations. As HRH holders, Harry and Meghan had been entitled to certain ceremonial duties, privileges in official capacities, and access to royal resources. With the permanent removal of these styles, the couple's official engagements, funding arrangements, and security provisions were inevitably affected. Court insiders explained that while the ducal titles of Duke and Duchess of Sussex remained intact, the absence of HRH styling significantly limited the couple's participation in official events and removed the implicit authority traditionally granted to royal family members. This created a new reality, one in which Harry and Meghan's public appearances, patronages, and influence would be dramatically altered. One of the most striking aspects of the announcement was its extension to their children. Archie Harrison and Lilibet Diana, both still very young, are now formally excluded from the HRH hierarchy. This unprecedented move meant that the next generation of Sussexes would grow up without the same privileges, formal recognition, or ceremonial roles historically associated with children of the royal family. Experts in royal protocol described this as an extraordinary measure, noting that it sets a historical precedent that could influence future decisions regarding titles, inheritance, and family hierarchy. For the children, it is a redefinition of identity imposed before they can fully comprehend its significance, a reality that is both poignant and potentially divisive. Reactions from Harry and Meghan were not immediately made public, but insiders suggested a mix of shock, disbelief, and frustration. While the couple had been aware of ongoing discussions within the palace, the finality of William's decision reportedly caught them off guard. Meghan, known for her assertive public persona and advocacy work, was said to be particularly concerned about the implications for their children's future, while Harry faced the dual challenge of processing personal disappointment and managing the global media response. Friends close to the couple described tense discussions, with Harry reportedly grappling with a sense of betrayal and Meghan considering the broader ramifications for their family identity. The timing of the announcement was also significant. It coincided with a period of heightened scrutiny for the monarchy, as public interest in royal affairs remains extraordinarily high. Analysts noted that by releasing the news at this moment, the palace ensured maximum visibility while simultaneously framing the decision as an assertive and decisive action. It underscored the message that the monarchy is an institution governed by rules, hierarchy, and tradition, not personal preference or celebrity status. In other words, no matter how famous, popular, or influential, membership in the royal family requires adherence to obligations that cannot be sidestepped without consequence. Historians weighed in quickly, emphasizing the rarity of such a public and definitive decision. In modern history, there have been few instances where royal titles were stripped in such a manner, and never with the explicit extension to children. They noted that the move sends a message not only to Harry and Meghan but also to the public. The monarchy remains vigilant, capable of asserting authority, and unafraid to enforce rules even against those closest in blood. This historical perspective amplified the weight of the announcement, framing it not as a personal dispute, but as a moment with far-reaching implications for the institution itself. The legal dimensions were equally compelling. While HRH titles are ultimately granted and controlled by the sovereign, their revocation involves complex interactions with constitutional protocols, advisory councils, and formal documentation. Sources familiar with the legal framework emphasized that William's decision was carefully structured to avoid potential challenges, ensuring that there would be no ambiguity or loopholes for the Sussexes to exploit. It was not merely a statement of opinion. It was a binding declaration, backed by legal authority and formalized through the appropriate channels within the royal administration. As the world digested the announcement, commentators explored the potential next steps. Some speculated about how Harry and Meghan might respond publicly, whether through statements, interviews, or media appearances. Others focused on the implications for future generations, questioning whether Archie and Lilibet would face similar limitations in their engagement with royal duties or public perception. The decision also sparked discussions about media coverage, financial independence, and personal branding, highlighting the intersection of traditional monarchy with contemporary celebrity culture. The emotional toll on Harry was immense. He had married Meghan believing in a partnership grounded in love and trust. The realization that she might have orchestrated such a sophisticated deception was devastating. It wasn't just about legality, it was about betrayal. How could someone manipulate something as foundational as a child's identity? How could the very documents meant to protect and affirm the children be weaponized for secrecy or personal gain? Harry wrestled with these questions privately, recognizing that each step in the discovery process brought him closer to a painful confrontation with reality. At the same time, Harry had to consider the wider implications. These weren't private papers hidden in a drawer. They were official, legally binding documents that, if left unchallenged, could have far-reaching consequences. The children's schooling, future legal rights, citizenship, and even succession considerations could all be affected. Harry understood that failing to act could compromise not only his children's present, but their entire future. Protecting Archie and Lilibet was no longer a matter of parental duty alone. It had become a legal imperative. Experts in forensic analysis played a crucial role in strengthening the case. Handwriting specialists examined each signature, noting variations in pressure, slant, and curvature that suggested manipulation. Ink analysis revealed differences in chemical composition, indicating that some entries had been written with a different pen at a later time. Stamps and seals, which are designed to be tamper-proof, showed signs of artificial enhancement, as if someone had tried to recreate official insignia to maintain the illusion of authenticity. Every piece of evidence built a compelling narrative that could not be easily dismissed. Harry's legal team also began tracing the chain of custody of the documents. They examined how the certificates and medical records had moved from the hospital to personal custody, identifying potential points where tampering could have occurred. This part of the investigation required delicate navigation. Every move had to be precise to avoid alerting Meghan prematurely and to preserve the integrity of the evidence. The discovery phase was a complex interplay of observation, verification, and strategy, and Harry remained deeply involved in every aspect. The psychological impact of this discovery extended beyond Harry himself. Those close to him, including family members and trusted aides, grappled with shock and disbelief. Conversations that began with polite concern quickly turned into strategic discussions about evidence preservation, legal action, and potential outcomes. The household was in a state of tension, balancing the need for discretion with the urgency of the situation. It was clear that any leak or premature disclosure could amplify the damage, both legally and emotionally. Adding to the complexity was the awareness of the public eye. Harry knew that any legal action would inevitably draw media attention. In the age of instant news and social media, even minor details could be blown out of proportion, further complicating an already sensitive situation. The team had to anticipate leaks, narrative spins, and potential misinformation campaigns. Every communication, internal memo, and legal filing was scrutinized for potential exposure, reinforcing the importance of meticulous planning. Amid the legal and technical work, Harry reflected on the human dimension. The act of forgery, if proven, represented more than just a legal violation. It was a profound breach of trust within a family. He considered the implications for the children's understanding of their own identities, the narratives they might encounter as they grew, and the potential emotional consequences of discovering these truths at a later stage. Protecting them required not just legal action, but careful psychological and emotional consideration, balancing the need for truth with the responsibility to shield them from undue trauma. By the end of the discovery phase, Harry had amassed a dossier of evidence that left little room for doubt. The documents, the expert analyses, the corroborating testimonies, all pointed to a deliberate, calculated deception. The realization of what this meant for the children and for the integrity of their family history solidified his resolve. Legal action was no longer optional. It was the only path forward. The next steps would involve formal filings, court proceedings, and a carefully orchestrated strategy to ensure that the truth could be established in a credible and authoritative manner. As this chapter closes, the audience is left with a clear understanding of the magnitude of the discovery. What began as a routine review of paperwork evolved into an investigation, revealing a sophisticated web of deception. The stakes could not be higher. The children's identities, the family's integrity, and the public perception of one of the world's most scrutinized couples were all on the line. Harry's journey from suspicion to action marks the beginning of a legal battle that promises to challenge not only legal norms, but also notions of trust, responsibility, and the lengths a parent will go to protect their children. The next chapter will explore the emotional confrontation between Harry and Meghan, the tension-filled conversations that preceded the lawsuit, and the strategic decisions that set the stage for the most consequential legal action of his life. The confrontation between Harry and Meghan was inevitable. Once the evidence had been gathered and corroborated, Harry knew he could no longer ignore the truth. The weight of the deception pressed down on him every moment, making it impossible to continue as if nothing had happened. The private moment in which he first addressed Meghan was one that had been rehearsed in his mind countless times, each iteration more precise, more cautious, and more emotionally charged. This wasn't just a discussion. It was the unveiling of betrayal, the exposure of a hidden reality that had profound implications for their entire family. The setting was deliberately chosen. Harry requested a private, neutral location where security and discretion could be guaranteed. No distractions, no interruptions, and no outside observers who might inadvertently influence the conversation. The room was modest, neutral in tone, deliberately stripped of any opulence that might symbolize status or hierarchy. It was meant to focus attention on the gravity of the words that would be exchanged. As Meghan entered, Harry felt a mixture of emotions: anger, sadness, disbelief, and an undeniable sense of duty to his children. The conversation began with measured words, an attempt at calm and clarity. Harry outlined the evidence that had been collected, presenting it systematically to leave no room for ambiguity. The forged signatures, the inconsistencies in dates, the discrepancies in medical records, all were laid bare. Meghan's initial reaction was one of surprise, bordering on disbelief. Harry observed the subtle shifts in her expressions. The flicker of nervousness, the tightness around her eyes, the almost imperceptible hesitation in her voice. Each reaction was a clue, reinforcing the reality that this was no simple misunderstanding. The discussion quickly escalated. Harry's tone, though controlled, carried the weight of profound disappointment. He spoke not just of legal violations, but of the emotional betrayal that had accompanied the acts. Trust, he emphasized, was not something that could be repaired with excuses once foundational lies had been told. The documents in question were more than administrative forms. They represented truth, legitimacy, and the integrity of his children's lives. Each falsified entry undermined the very foundation of their family, a reality that Harry could not ignore. Meghan, in response, attempted to offer explanations, though they were inconsistent and often contradictory. She referenced intentions that had never been disclosed, actions taken under the guise of privacy, and the notion that the public would have unfairly judged their family. Harry, however, was unmoved. Intentions could not erase actions. The falsification was real, verifiable, and deliberate. There was no room for rationalizations or justifications. The conversation was tense, emotional, and unrelenting, each side grappling with the gravity of what had transpired. The emotional fallout was immediate and visceral. Harry felt a sense of betrayal that went beyond personal anger. It was a violation of the sacred bond of parenthood and partnership. Trust, once broken, carried consequences that extended far beyond the immediate argument. Friends and family, though not present in the room, would inevitably sense the tension, and the potential for leaks or misunderstandings was high. Harry knew that discretion was essential, even as his emotions surged. The confrontation was as much about protecting the children as it was about seeking accountability. During the conversation, Harry also considered the public implications. Meghan's actions, if left unchallenged, could not only compromise legal and familial integrity, but also expose the children to potential scrutiny or misrepresentation. Every forged document represented a potential vulnerability, a narrative that could be weaponized by media outlets, critics, or even individuals within royal circles who might have ulterior motives. Protecting the children's identity and legacy became intertwined with the legal and moral dimensions of the confrontation. Harry's emotions were complex and layered. There was sadness for the children, who would eventually have to understand the truth about their documents. There was anger at the deliberate nature of the deception. There was a sense of betrayal from someone he had trusted implicitly. And there was resolve, a firm determination to take action to protect the integrity of his family and ensure that justice was served. The confrontation was not a moment of impulsive reaction, but a carefully considered acknowledgement of truth and consequence. Meghan, for her part, exhibited a range of responses. At times defensive, at times deflecting responsibility. She also showed moments of vulnerability, though Harry viewed them through the lens of documented evidence and legal counsel. Each reaction, however, could not negate the reality that the documents were falsified. The conversation spanned hours, punctuated by moments of silence, raised voices, and tears. It was emotionally exhausting, a crucible in which trust, truth, and accountability were tested simultaneously. By the end of the discussion, Harry's position was clear. Legal action was not only justified but necessary. He could not allow the falsification of birth certificates and medical records to remain unchallenged. The confrontation had confirmed his suspicions, clarified the extent of the deception, and solidified his resolve. The emotional fallout, while intense, also reinforced the importance of moving forward in a structured and strategic manner. The children's welfare, the protection of truth, and the preservation of family integrity were paramount. Following the confrontation, Harry sought counsel on the next steps, weighing options with his legal team, trusted advisors, and psychological experts. The decision to file a lawsuit was not taken lightly. It required careful planning to ensure the case would be legally robust, emotionally responsible, and strategically sound. Every potential outcome was considered: public exposure, media scrutiny, legal defenses, and the possibility of negotiation. The confrontation had set the stage, but the path forward demanded precision, foresight, and unwavering commitment. Emotionally, Harry felt a mix of relief and renewed tension. Relief, because the truth was now acknowledged, and the path forward was clear. Tension, because the legal battle would be public, invasive, and fraught with uncertainty. The confrontation was the turning point, a moment of recognition that personal relationships had been compromised, and that formal measures were required to safeguard the children's future. It was a decisive moment that would define not only the immediate response, but the broader trajectory of the family's narrative. The chapter closes with Harry stepping back to assess the aftermath. The confrontation had revealed more than deception. It had exposed vulnerabilities, clarified stakes, and necessitated decisive action. The emotional fallout was raw, immediate, and undeniable, yet it also provided the clarity needed to move forward. The stage was set for a legal battle that promised to be as complex as it was consequential, one that would not only address the forged documents, but also challenge the very notions of trust, integrity, and accountability within the highest echelons of family and society. Once the confrontation had concluded and the magnitude of the deception became undeniable, Harry knew that he had to take formal legal action. This was not merely a personal matter of betrayal. It was a matter of legal and moral responsibility. Forged birth certificates and falsified medical records were serious offenses, carrying consequences that went far beyond the private sphere. Harry's first step was to assemble a team of the most experienced and discreet legal experts, specialists who understood the intricacies of family law, forgery, and the particular sensitivities that came with royal family matters. The legal team meticulously reviewed every document, cross-referencing them with official records, medical institutions, and governmental filings. What they uncovered was staggering: multiple instances of inconsistencies that could not be explained away, dates that did not align with hospital records, signatures that failed to match verified samples, and discrepancies in vital statistics that indicated deliberate manipulation. Each piece of evidence was cataloged, time-stamped, and verified for authenticity. The legal foundation for a formal lawsuit was strong, and Harry knew that precision and attention to detail would be critical for a successful outcome. Preparation for the legal proceedings was intense and multi-layered. Harry's team not only focused on gathering evidence, but also anticipated Meghan's potential defenses. They examined past interviews, social media posts, and public statements for any inconsistencies that might align with or contradict the newly discovered evidence. They also consulted with forensic document experts who could testify regarding the authenticity, or lack thereof, of the birth certificates and medical records. This comprehensive approach ensured that Harry's case would be resilient against the most sophisticated attempts at refutation. The emotional weight of the legal preparations was heavy on Harry. Each document, each expert report, was a reminder of the betrayal he had experienced, and yet he knew he had to remain objective, strategic, and composed. Legal action was about justice and protection for his children, not a platform for personal revenge. He understood that any misstep, any emotional reaction, could jeopardize the case or create openings for manipulation. The courtroom, he realized, was a battlefield of evidence, strategy, and credibility, and preparation would be the key to victory. Filing the lawsuit itself was a monumental step. The legal team carefully drafted the complaint, outlining the allegations with precision and clarity. The charges included fraud, forgery, and intentional misrepresentation, all tied to the falsified documents. The complaint also emphasized the potential harm caused to Archie and Lilibet, framing the legal action as a protective measure for the children's identity, legitimacy, and future. Once filed, the lawsuit became a public record, immediately attracting media attention and speculation. The response from Meghan's legal representatives was swift. They filed motions to dismiss certain claims and requested private hearings, arguing that many of the allegations were based on private family matters. However, Harry's legal team countered effectively, presenting evidence that demonstrated the verifiable falsification of documents and the potential legal ramifications of leaving such actions unchallenged. The early exchanges in court highlighted the intensity and complexity of the case, signaling that this would be a prolonged and high-stakes legal battle. Media coverage began to escalate rapidly. International outlets reported on the lawsuit with a mix of intrigue and sensationalism. Headlines emphasized the alleged forgery and the high-profile nature of the case, while commentators speculated on the implications for both Harry and Meghan, as well as the royal family at large. Harry, however, remained focused, understanding that public opinion could be volatile and that media narratives might attempt to influence perceptions of the legal proceedings. The case demanded careful navigation, balancing transparency with discretion. The couple's public communication strategy was carefully considered. Advisors and media specialists reportedly worked with Harry and Meghan to craft statements that would convey their disappointment and disagreement while maintaining a level of decorum appropriate for former senior royals. Their messaging needed to strike a delicate balance. It had to express personal grievance without crossing the line into public antagonism, which could further damage their reputation and undermine their position. The couple's statements were released in a measured tone, emphasizing respect for the monarchy, but also highlighting their perception of unfair treatment. This approach reflects a sophisticated understanding of media dynamics and public sentiment, as they sought to manage both domestic and international reactions. Social media played a crucial role in shaping the public aspect of their reaction. Meghan and Harry's platforms, including Instagram and their Archewell website, became conduits for carefully curated expressions of disappointment, resilience, and family solidarity. Posts emphasized themes of personal integrity, the importance of family, and the emotional impact of the decision on their children. These messages were strategically timed to coincide with breaking news coverage, ensuring that their narrative reached a broad audience and framed public discourse around their perspective. Analysts observed that this approach allowed them to maintain visibility and influence public perception even as they faced institutional exclusion. Interviews with close associates reveal that the couple's initial response was not limited to public statements. Privately, Harry and Meghan engaged in intense discussions about the legal and personal ramifications of the revocation. Legal teams were consulted to explore potential avenues for challenging the decision, although sources suggest that Harry and Meghan understood the limitations of their options given the authority of the sovereign. These discussions also included considerations for their children, with the couple emphasizing the importance of protecting their privacy, emotional well-being, and future prospects. The interplay between personal concern and strategic planning highlights the multifaceted nature of their reaction, combining emotion, pragmatism, and media savvy. Family dynamics added another layer of complexity. Harry and Meghan's reaction was shaped not only by the decision itself, but also by their perception of the roles played by other family members, particularly Prince William and senior advisors. Insiders report that Harry was deeply hurt by what he saw as a lack of empathy or understanding from his brother, feelings that were compounded by years of tension and perceived slights. Meghan, meanwhile, reportedly expressed frustration at what she interpreted as a pattern of institutional bias and obstruction, citing prior experiences where her concerns were minimized or dismissed. These dynamics contributed to a sense of isolation and motivated the couple to assert their position publicly. The timing of their public response was also a critical consideration. Sources indicate that Harry and Meghan were aware that immediate reaction could provoke further media frenzy, while delay could allow speculation and rumors to dominate the narrative. Ultimately, they chose a strategy that combined prompt acknowledgement of the news with carefully measured statements that allowed them to frame the conversation on their terms. This decision underscores the strategic sophistication of their communications approach, reflecting an awareness of how perception, timing, and narrative control influence public understanding. Media coverage of their reaction amplified the impact of their statements. News outlets across the globe analyzed every word, gesture, and social media post, often speculating about underlying emotions and motivations. Commentary ranged from sympathetic interpretations emphasizing the human impact of institutional decisions to critical assessments framing the response as defensive or confrontational. The couple's reaction, therefore, became both a personal expression and a broader public event, influencing perceptions of the monarchy, the couple, and the nature of modern royal life. Experts in royal protocol and media management note that the Sussex's public response was consistent with a deliberate effort to maintain dignity while asserting agency. Unlike previous generations of royals, who often remained silent or constrained by traditional norms, Harry and Meghan leveraged modern communications tools to express their perspective directly to the public. This approach not only allowed them to manage their narrative, but also set a precedent for how former senior royals can navigate public crises in the digital age. Analysts argue that this strategy reflects a broader shift in the balance of power between the institution and individual members, highlighting the growing importance of media literacy and narrative control. Emotional impact played a significant role in shaping the public reaction. Witnesses describe Harry and Meghan as grappling with feelings of betrayal, disappointment, and vulnerability. The exclusion of their children from HRH styles was particularly distressing, evoking concerns about identity, belonging, and future opportunities. The couple's public statements emphasized these personal dimensions, highlighting the human consequences of institutional decisions. By framing the story around family and emotional well-being, they sought to elicit empathy from the public and reinforce their image as caring parents navigating unprecedented challenges. The public reaction also included symbolic elements. Harry and Meghan's appearances, clothing choices, and even posture were interpreted as deliberate signals, conveying messages about resilience, dignity, and independence. Observers noted that these visual cues complemented their verbal communications, reinforcing the narrative of thoughtful, measured response amidst adversity. The integration of symbolic expression with strategic messaging demonstrates a sophisticated understanding of the interplay between public perception, media framing, and personal expression. In addition to public statements and appearances, the couple engaged in outreach to key allies and supporters. These private communications were designed to build networks of influence, garner support, and ensure that their perspective was accurately represented in media coverage. Sources indicate that these efforts included discussions with legal advisors, advocacy groups, and sympathetic media contacts, reflecting a comprehensive approach to crisis management that extended beyond public-facing channels. Despite careful planning, the intensity of public scrutiny created ongoing stress and challenges for Harry and Meghan. Insider reports suggest that the couple faced a relentless cycle of media coverage, speculation, and commentary, necessitating constant monitoring and response. This environment of heightened attention required resilience, coordination, and strategic foresight, as the couple sought to maintain control over their narrative while navigating the personal and emotional toll of the situation. Ultimately, Harry and Meghan's public reaction to the revocation of their HRH titles illustrates the intersection of personal experience, media strategy, and institutional conflict. Their response was shaped by emotional, legal, and strategic considerations, reflecting a sophisticated understanding of modern communications and public perception. By asserting their perspective, protecting their family, and maintaining a degree of dignity amidst controversy, the couple navigated an unprecedented royal crisis in a manner that balanced personal expression with public strategy. Their reaction also set the stage for ongoing dynamics with the royal family, signaling both the potential for confrontation and the possibility of negotiated outcomes. Analysts suggest that the public and private dimensions of their response will continue to influence perceptions of the monarchy, the couple, and the evolving nature of royal life in the 21st century. As such, Harry and Meghan's public reaction represents a critical turning point, not only for the individuals involved, but for the broader narrative of the British monarchy in an era of unprecedented scrutiny and change. As the shock of the revocation of their HRH titles settled, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle immediately began exploring the legal avenues available to them. This chapter examines the intricate legal landscape surrounding the revocation, the advice they received from top legal experts, and the broader implications of challenging a decision made by the reigning monarch. The story of their legal considerations is not just about strategy. It highlights the intersection of constitutional law, royal tradition, and personal rights in an era where public scrutiny and media attention can transform private disputes into global spectacles. The first step for the Sussexes was to consult with legal counsel who specialize in constitutional and family law, with a particular focus on matters concerning the monarchy. Sources close to the couple describe a meticulous process of assembling a team of lawyers who understood both the historical precedents and the current legal framework surrounding royal titles. Unlike ordinary citizens, members of the royal family operate within a complex system where personal, familial, and institutional rights intersect in ways that are often opaque and heavily influenced by tradition. The revocation of HRH titles is not merely a symbolic act. It carries implications for inheritance, public perception, and official duties, all of which require careful legal interpretation. The initial legal advice was sobering. Lawyers explained that the authority to grant or revoke HRH titles rests solely with the sovereign, in accordance with long-standing constitutional conventions. Historically, the king or queen has exercised this power with significant discretion, and there are very few examples of successful challenges. This meant that while Harry and Meghan could explore legal avenues, the likelihood of overturning the decision was uncertain. Experts emphasized that any challenge would need to balance respect for royal protocol with the assertion of personal rights, creating a delicate and unprecedented legal strategy. Despite the inherent challenges, Harry and Meghan were determined to consider all options. Legal advisors suggested multiple approaches, including formal appeals within the palace, negotiation with the royal household, and, if necessary, public legal proceedings. Each option came with its own set of risks and potential consequences. A formal appeal could be seen as respectful but might not yield results, while public litigation could draw further media attention and escalate tensions. The couple's team carefully weighed these factors, recognizing that every step would be scrutinized by the public and analyzed by constitutional scholars and media outlets alike. The discussion also included potential legal claims based on human rights and personal dignity. Some legal experts proposed that the revocation of titles, especially when applied to their children, could be interpreted as an infringement on personal identity and familial rights. This perspective framed the issue not merely as a matter of royal protocol, but as a question of fairness and equality under the law. Harry and Meghan's legal team explored whether modern legal principles could provide a basis for challenging a centuries-old system of royal prerogative. Although the likelihood of success was debated, this approach offered a strategic avenue to assert their position without directly confronting the monarch in an adversarial manner. In addition to formal legal strategies, the couple considered the public and reputational implications of any action. Legal experts advise that aggressive legal maneuvers could provoke negative media coverage and alienate segments of the public. Conversely, a restrained and carefully framed approach could generate sympathy and support, emphasizing the human and familial dimensions of the issue. Harry and Meghan's team developed a dual strategy, balancing the pursuit of legal remedies with proactive media management, ensuring that their narrative remained coherent and persuasive across multiple platforms. Private consultations with senior legal advisors also included discussions about timing and messaging. Sources indicate that the couple was acutely aware of the importance of controlling the flow of information. Leaks to the media, intentional or accidental, could shape public opinion and influence the legal environment. The Sussexes were advised to maintain confidentiality during the initial stages of legal exploration, allowing them to assess options without external pressures or misrepresentation. This approach reflects a sophisticated understanding of how law, media, and public perception intersect, particularly in cases involving high-profile individuals. Another aspect of the legal strategy involved evaluating historical precedents. Legal advisors reviewed past instances in which HRH titles or similar honors had been altered or revoked, analyzing the circumstances, rationales, and outcomes. While such cases were rare, they provided valuable insight into the boundaries of royal authority and potential arguments for contesting decisions. The historical context also highlighted the evolving nature of monarchy in modern times, illustrating how legal frameworks, public opinion, and media scrutiny increasingly intersect with traditional royal prerogatives. In addition to constitutional and historical considerations, the couple's legal team examined the specific language and implications of the revocation order. Detailed analysis focused on the scope of the decision, particularly regarding their children's titles and future recognition within the royal family. Legal experts debated whether provisions could be interpreted in a way that allowed for partial restoration or alternative forms of recognition. These discussions were highly technical, reflecting the complexity of blending royal tradition with contemporary legal interpretation. Ethical considerations were also central to the discussions. Legal advisors emphasized the need to balance the assertion of rights with respect for family relationships and public trust. Challenging the decision could strain personal relationships and invite scrutiny of private matters, while acquiescing without contest could be perceived as acceptance of what the couple viewed as an unfair decision. Harry and Meghan's team carefully considered these factors, weighing personal integrity against the potential for public conflict and long-term consequences for their children. Throughout this period, the couple remained in close communication with trusted confidants who offered both legal insight and emotional support. Friends and advisors described a climate of intense deliberation, where each decision was evaluated from multiple angles. Sources suggest that the Sussexes approached the legal challenge not as a single event, but as an ongoing process, understanding that resolution could take months or even years, depending on responses from the royal household and the courts. The public dimension of their legal strategy was equally important. By coordinating statements, social media posts, and selective media engagement, Harry and Meghan sought to maintain public support while avoiding unnecessary escalation. Analysts note that this approach represents a modern adaptation of crisis management for former senior royals, leveraging both legal channels and media platforms to influence outcomes and shape public perception simultaneously. Finally, the couple considered potential outcomes and contingency plans. Legal experts emphasized the need to prepare for all scenarios, including partial concessions, mediated agreements, or prolonged disputes. These preparations included both practical considerations, such as financial arrangements and security, and strategic considerations related to public image, family dynamics, and long-term influence. The comprehensive nature of these plans reflects the gravity of the situation and the couple's determination to navigate the unprecedented circumstances with foresight and resilience. The exploration of legal challenges and advice illustrates the intersection of personal, institutional, and public factors in Harry and Meghan's response. Their approach combined meticulous legal analysis, historical research, media strategy, and ethical consideration, demonstrating the complexity of navigating royal decisions in the 21st century. By engaging legal experts, carefully evaluating options, and coordinating their public narrative, the couple positioned themselves to assert their perspective while managing the multifaceted risks associated with challenging the sovereign's authority. This chapter underscores not only the procedural dimensions of the legal considerations, but also the emotional and strategic weight borne by Harry and Meghan. The revocation of HRH titles represented a profound personal and familial impact, while the legal exploration revealed both the limitations and opportunities inherent in contesting royal authority. Through a combination of expert counsel, careful planning, and public communication, the couple sought to navigate a situation that tested their resilience, strategic thinking, and commitment to their family and values. The narrative of legal challenges and advice offers insight into how modern royals, particularly those who have stepped back from official duties, can engage with complex institutional decisions. It illustrates the blending of tradition and contemporary legal norms, the interplay between private deliberation and public expression, and the ongoing negotiation of identity, authority, and reputation within a highly scrutinized environment. Harry and Meghan's experience provides a case study in balancing personal rights, family interests, and public perception, shedding light on the evolving role of former senior royals in a media-driven, legally conscious era. The news of Prince William's decisive move to revoke Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's HRH titles sent shockwaves not only through the royal family, but across global media networks. Within hours, newspapers, online outlets, and television channels scrambled to cover the unprecedented announcement. The reaction was immediate and polarized. Public opinion began to form quickly, and media narratives shaped perceptions in ways that would influence both the couple's public image and the ongoing debate about the monarchy's role in modern society. Understanding this chapter of the story requires exploring how information spread, how social media amplified emotions, and how experts interpreted the event for a global audience. The first reports emerged from trusted royal correspondents in London, citing official palace communications. Headlines splashed across news portals in bold, declarative statements. Prince William strips Sussexes of HRH titles permanently, and Harry and Meghan exiled from royal privilege forever. These initial reports emphasized the finality of the decision, underlining that the titles could never be restored, even for their children, Archie and Lilibet. The language used by reporters was both factual and dramatic, setting the tone for how the public would interpret the story. As the news spread, it became clear that this was not just another royal scandal. It represented a structural change in the monarchy, one with lasting consequence. Social media platforms exploded with reactions. Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok became forums where millions of people shared opinions, memes, and commentary. Supporters of the monarchy praised Prince William for asserting authority and maintaining the dignity of royal tradition. They framed the revocation as a necessary step to protect the institution from perceived breaches of protocol and public scrutiny. These voices emphasized loyalty, duty, and the sanctity of the crown, often referencing historical precedent to justify the decision. In contrast, supporters of Harry and Meghan condemned the action as excessively harsh, labeling it a public humiliation and an unnecessary continuation of a pattern of punitive measures against the couple. Many expressed sympathy for the Sussexes, highlighting their sacrifices in stepping back from royal duties and the relentless media intrusion they endured over the years. The media coverage was not uniform. Traditional outlets such as the BBC and The Times provided detailed analysis, incorporating expert opinions from constitutional scholars, historians, and former palace insiders. Articles explored the legal authority of the sovereign to grant or revoke titles, compared this action to historical precedents, and assessed the implications for both the couple and the monarchy. Commentary ranged from neutral and analytical to opinionated and sensational, reflecting the diverse ways the media engaged with this story. In the United States, media coverage leaned toward dramatization, emphasizing the human and emotional impact on Harry and Meghan, often framing the story as a modern royal feud with global implications. Online discussions highlighted the generational divide in public opinion. Younger audiences, particularly those active on social media, tended to empathize with Harry and Meghan, viewing the revocation as emblematic of outdated and rigid institutional practices. They saw the couple's departure from royal duties as an act of personal agency, and the stripping of titles as a punitive measure inconsistent with modern values. Older audiences, meanwhile, were more likely to view the decision as necessary for preserving the monarchy's reputation and tradition. These contrasting perspectives fueled intense debates across comment sections, forums, and talk shows, reflecting the broader cultural tensions surrounding the role of the monarchy in contemporary society. Public opinion polls conducted within days of the announcement provided quantitative insight into these reactions. In the United Kingdom, surveys indicated a slight majority supported Prince William's decision, citing respect for protocol and the importance of maintaining royal decorum. However, a significant minority expressed concern that the action was overly punitive and could harm public perceptions of the monarchy's compassion and fairness. Internationally, particularly in the United States, public sentiment leaned more heavily in favor of Harry and Meghan, with many respondents criticizing the revocation as a symbolic overreach by the institution. Analysts noted that these regional differences in perception were influenced by media framing, historical awareness of the monarchy, and cultural attitudes toward authority and family disputes. Media outlets also examined the potential long-term effects of the decision on the monarchy's public image. Commentators speculated that while the revocation of HRH titles reinforced Prince William's authority, it risked alienating audiences who valued transparency, fairness, and empathy in public figures. Headlines warned of potential reputational damage, suggesting that strict adherence to tradition might be at odds with evolving societal expectations. Conversely, some analysts argued that the move would strengthen the institution by demonstrating that titles and privileges are contingent upon adherence to established norms, emphasizing accountability and consistency. Royal experts provided in-depth commentary on the implications for the couple's children. Archie and Lilibet, who were directly affected by the revocation, became focal points in media narratives. Reports highlighted the emotional and psychological dimensions of the decision, questioning how young children might understand their altered status and what it meant for their identity within the royal family. Social media debates often centered on fairness and the responsibilities of the monarchy toward the younger generation, with some expressing outrage that children were being impacted by decisions beyond their control, while others emphasized that royal titles are privileges rather than inherent rights. The story also became a topic of late-night talk shows, podcasts, and online video commentary. Influencers, journalists, and political analysts weighed in, offering perspectives ranging from critical to supportive of the Sussexes. Some explored the broader political and social ramifications, suggesting that the decision reflected shifting power dynamics within the royal family and a more assertive role for Prince William as heir to the throne. Others examined the emotional resonance, analyzing public fascination with royal conflict and the human tendency to invest in narratives of family drama. The proliferation of commentary contributed to a feedback loop where public opinion influenced media coverage, which in turn shaped further reactions. Internationally, media coverage framed the story through different cultural lenses. In Commonwealth countries such as Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, reporting often balanced respect for tradition with acknowledgement of the couple's challenges. Editorials explored questions about the monarchy's relevance, the balance between duty and personal freedom, and the expectations placed on senior royals in a modern context. In the United States, coverage frequently emphasized the human interest angle, highlighting Harry and Meghan's personal experiences, their charitable work, and the media pressures they faced. These international perspectives added depth to the conversation, demonstrating the global fascination with the monarchy and the ways in which cultural values shape interpretation. The role of social media influencers and online communities cannot be overstated. Hashtags, viral videos, and opinion threads amplified reactions, allowing individuals to participate in the discussion on a massive scale. Platforms such as Twitter hosted tens of thousands of posts per hour, while Instagram and TikTok users created content ranging from satirical memes to heartfelt tributes. The speed and scale of these reactions illustrate how modern communication channels shape public opinion almost instantaneously, creating a global dialogue around events that previously would have unfolded more slowly through traditional news cycles. Amid the public discourse, there were also voices of caution. Constitutional scholars, psychologists, and family experts reminded audiences that public opinion, while influential, does not necessarily dictate legal or institutional outcomes. They emphasized the complexity of royal protocols, the limited recourse available to former senior royals, and the need to consider long-term implications for family relationships and institutional stability. Their commentary added nuance to a story often dominated by sensational headlines and emotional reactions, providing a more balanced understanding of the stakes involved. In response to media scrutiny, the palace remained strategically silent for several days, allowing reporting to unfold without direct interference. This approach created an air of anticipation and speculation, with journalists and commentators interpreting the absence of statements as a calculated move, either to let the decision stand unquestioned or to maintain control over messaging. Analysts noted that the palace's silence reinforced the perception of authority and decisiveness, while simultaneously fueling curiosity and debate among the public and media outlets. Public reactions were not uniform even within the same media outlets. Opinion pieces, editorials, and letters to the editor revealed a spectrum of interpretations, reflecting the complexity of public sentiment. Some emphasized respect for Prince William's authority, while others highlighted compassion for Harry and Meghan's experiences, particularly the pressures of constant media scrutiny and public expectation. These debates underscored the tension between tradition and modernization, authority and empathy, and institutional loyalty versus individual rights, themes that resonated deeply with audiences worldwide. The narrative of public opinion and media reactions demonstrates the multifaceted impact of royal decisions in the contemporary era. In the case of Harry and Meghan, the revocation of HRH titles became more than a symbolic action. It was a catalyst for global discourse, emotional engagement, and analysis of institutional practices. The story reflects how modern media amplifies events, how public sentiment shapes perceptions, and how high-profile decisions can reverberate far beyond immediate circles, influencing culture, politics, and social norms. In conclusion, public opinion and media reactions to the revocation of Harry and Meghan's HRH titles illustrate the power of narrative, the influence of global communication, and the enduring fascination with royal family dynamics. From instant headlines to social media debates, from analytical commentary to emotional responses, the story captured a wide spectrum of reactions that continue to evolve. The Sussex's experience provides a case study in how public perception, media coverage, and institutional decisions intersect, highlighting the intricate relationship between private family matters and their public resonance. This chapter reflects the profound effect that both media and public sentiment can have on high-profile figures, shaping not only immediate reactions, but also long-term reputational and cultural implications. The revocation of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's HRH titles did not only spark debate within the United Kingdom. It sent ripples across the globe, particularly throughout the Commonwealth nations, where the British monarchy continues to hold symbolic significance. From Canada to Australia, New Zealand to Jamaica, leaders, media outlets, and citizens reacted with a mixture of intrigue, concern, and speculation about the long-term implications of the decision. This chapter delves deeply into the international reactions, the political and cultural consequences for the monarchy, and the nuanced ways in which different countries processed and interpreted this unprecedented event. In Canada, a country where Harry and Meghan have significant personal connections and a large fan base, the news was met with both curiosity and cautious analysis. Canadian media outlets such as CBC, Global News, and CTV provided extensive coverage, emphasizing the historic nature of the revocation and the broader questions it raised about the monarchy's relevance in modern society. Editorials highlighted the tension between royal tradition and evolving public expectations, while opinion polls revealed a divided population. Some Canadians admired Prince William's decisiveness and commitment to protocol, while others empathized with the Sussexes, recognizing the couple's struggles with intense media scrutiny and institutional pressure. Political commentators debated whether the revocation might affect Canada's future relationship with the monarchy, especially as conversations about republicanism and constitutional reform continue to surface sporadically within the country. Australia's reaction was similarly layered. The Australian Broadcasting Corporation and major newspapers such as the Sydney Morning Herald covered the story in detail, highlighting the royal family's global influence and the symbolic nature of titles. Public discourse focused not only on the Sussexes' personal plight, but also on questions of authority, fairness, and the monarchy's adaptability in the 21st century. Social media in Australia quickly became a battleground of opinions, with hashtags trending that praised Prince William's firmness and others that expressed outrage over perceived cruelty toward Harry and Meghan. Political analysts noted that while the titles themselves carry no direct political authority, the decision could influence public sentiment about the monarchy and potentially fuel Republican discussions, particularly among younger Australians who often view royal traditions as outdated and irrelevant to contemporary national identity. New Zealand's response underscored a delicate balance between respect for tradition and recognition of individual autonomy. Coverage in New Zealand's leading outlets, including the New Zealand Herald and Stuff.co. NZ, examined the implications of permanent exile from royal privileges, analyzing the constitutional framework that allows the sovereign to grant and revoke titles. Experts weighed in on the precedent this sets, particularly regarding the children of former senior royals, and discussed how the decision reflects broader themes of accountability and duty within the monarchy. Public sentiment appeared divided. Many praised the enforcement of tradition, while others expressed sympathy for Harry and Meghan, focusing on the psychological impact of removing titles and the potential ramifications for the younger generation's perception of their family identity. In the Caribbean, the story took on a more politically charged dimension. Countries such as Jamaica, Barbados, and the Bahamas have been actively discussing the transition to republics in recent years, and the revocation of titles for Harry and Meghan provided an unexpected talking point. Local media, including the Jamaica Gleaner and Barbados Today, framed the event within the context of monarchical relevance, emphasizing the potential disconnect between public expectations and the institution's traditional structures. Politicians and commentators debated whether such actions could accelerate Republican movements or undermine the monarchy's appeal in nations with a historical connection to British rule. In some circles, the revocation was seen as a symbolic reminder that royal authority is hierarchical and rigid, while in others, it was interpreted as evidence of an institution struggling to reconcile tradition with contemporary values. In Europe, media coverage took on a more analytical and comparative tone. Outlets such as France 24, Der Spiegel, and El País examined the decision in the context of broader European monarchies, comparing the British response to similar controversies in Spain, Sweden, and the Netherlands. Analysts explored questions about succession, the distribution of royal privileges, and the balance between personal freedom and institutional loyalty. In particular, attention was given to the children of Harry and Meghan, emphasizing the uniqueness of permanently revoking titles not just for senior royals, but for the next generation. Commentary highlighted the tension between maintaining tradition and adapting to societal changes, with some experts predicting that this decision could influence the public's perception of monarchy as either a steadfast institution or an antiquated relic. The international media also paid attention to the personal implications for Harry and Meghan. Reports highlighted their continued charitable work, public appearances, and efforts to establish independent financial stability through media deals, speaking engagements, and philanthropy. Outlets emphasized the contrast between the couple's global popularity and the restrictive measures imposed by the monarchy, framing the story as a clash between personal autonomy and institutional authority. Analysts suggested that while the loss of HRH titles diminished formal recognition, it did not necessarily reduce their influence, particularly in regions where they maintained strong public support. The decision had profound implications for the broader Commonwealth. Constitutional experts noted that while the titles are primarily symbolic, they carry social and diplomatic weight that can influence public perception and the monarchy's soft power. By permanently revoking the Sussex's HRH status, the monarchy sent a signal about the importance of adherence to tradition and protocol, while simultaneously exposing the potential consequences for those who step outside established norms. This message was not lost on Commonwealth leaders, many of whom had to navigate the delicate task of acknowledging the decision without appearing to interfere in internal royal matters. Social media platforms worldwide amplified these conversations, creating a global discourse that transcended national boundaries. In Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, users debated the fairness of the decision, the influence of media scrutiny, and the balance between personal freedom and institutional responsibility. In the Caribbean and other Commonwealth nations, discussions often centered on the monarchy's relevance and the potential political implications of such a decisive action. These digital conversations provided a platform for diverse perspectives, ranging from support for the monarchy's enforcement of rules to criticism of what some perceived as unnecessarily harsh treatment. Scholars and cultural commentators also contributed to international dialogue. Historians contextualized the revocation within centuries of monarchical precedent, highlighting previous instances where titles and privileges were stripped or restored. Psychologists analyzed the potential emotional impact on Harry and Meghan, particularly their children, noting that identity formation can be influenced by societal recognition and familial structures. Political scientists explored how symbolic decisions, such as the permanent removal of HRH titles, can influence public perception, international relations, and cultural attitudes toward monarchy in an increasingly globalized world. International public opinion polls revealed a nuanced landscape. In countries with strong historical ties to the monarchy, a majority of respondents acknowledged the authority of Prince William's decision while expressing concern about the personal toll on Harry and Meghan. In nations considering or actively pursuing Republican governance, a larger proportion viewed the action as evidence that royal traditions may be outdated or inflexible. Across all regions, the story sparked discussions about accountability, tradition, family dynamics, and the balance between personal autonomy and institutional loyalty. The decision also prompted diplomatic commentary. While most Commonwealth leaders refrained from formal statements, some subtly acknowledged the public interest in the matter. Discussions centered on the symbolic importance of royal titles, their relevance in contemporary society, and how such high-profile decisions might influence public trust and engagement with the monarchy. Analysts suggested that while the revocation was primarily a domestic matter for the United Kingdom, its ripple effects would continue to be felt throughout the Commonwealth, shaping conversations about identity, governance, and cultural heritage. In the United States, media coverage framed the event as part of a larger narrative of Harry and Meghan's public struggles. The story was portrayed through the lens of personal resilience, public scrutiny, and the couple's efforts to assert independence. Analysts emphasized the contrast between the symbolic loss of titles and the couple's continued ability to command global attention, philanthropic influence, and media presence. Commentary often highlighted the media frenzy surrounding the couple, reflecting a broader fascination with the personal lives of royals and the dramatic interplay between privilege, authority, and personal choice. The global reaction also demonstrated the enduring fascination with monarchy as both a cultural institution and a narrative framework. The revocation of HRH titles for Harry and Meghan became a lens through which audiences examined broader themes: the tension between tradition and modernization, the pressures of public life, and the balance between authority and compassion. Across continents, the story sparked debate, curiosity, and analysis, reinforcing the monarchy's ability to captivate audiences and provoke discussion, even when specific actions are primarily symbolic. In conclusion, the international reactions and Commonwealth implications of Prince William's decision were far-reaching and complex. From public opinion and media coverage to diplomatic commentary and scholarly analysis, the revocation of HRH titles served as a catalyst for global dialogue about monarchy, tradition, and the responsibilities of high-profile families. Across multiple countries and cultural contexts, the story resonated on emotional, political, and symbolic levels, highlighting both the power and the fragility of royal influence in the modern world. This chapter underscores the intricate interplay between local decisions, global perceptions, and the cultural significance of monarchy, offering a window into the challenges and consequences of navigating public life in an interconnected, media-saturated world. The revocation of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's HRH titles is not only a deeply personal and symbolic matter, it also carries profound legal and constitutional implications that ripple across the monarchy, the royal household, and the broader governance structures of the United Kingdom. This chapter explores in detail the intricate legal frameworks that govern royal titles, the precedent set by Prince William's decision, potential challenges that could arise, and the constitutional questions this unprecedented move raises. Understanding the legal and constitutional dimensions provides clarity on how this action fits within the larger structure of monarchy, law, and national governance, while also highlighting the delicate balance between royal authority and public accountability. At the heart of the matter is the legal authority vested in the reigning monarch and, by extension, the heir apparent. The HRH designation, or Her Royal Highness, is a style that carries ceremonial, social, and symbolic significance. While it confers no formal political power, it embodies prestige, recognition, and membership within the inner circle of the royal family. The grant and revocation of such titles are governed by a combination of royal prerogative, statutory provisions, and established conventions. Prince William, as the Duke of Cambridge and heir to the throne, has traditionally exercised influence over internal family matters, especially those relating to titles and ceremonial roles. In exercising his authority to permanently revoke the Sussex's HRH styles, William acted within the bounds of precedent, yet the permanence of the decision, extending to the couple's children, marks a historic departure from typical royal practices. Royal prerogative allows certain decisions to be made by the sovereign or, in certain delegated circumstances, the heir apparent, without parliamentary approval. This prerogative includes matters such as the granting of peerages, the conferment of honors, and the use of royal titles. Historically, revocations have been rare and often temporary or situational, typically in response to political scandal, abdication, or misconduct. The Sussex's case differs fundamentally in that the revocation was framed as both permanent and inclusive of the next generation, setting a new benchmark for how royal authority can be exercised within family hierarchies. Legal scholars have noted that while prerogative powers are broad, their application in this context must still consider long-standing principles of fairness, duty, and precedent, particularly given the public and media scrutiny surrounding the couple. The constitutional framework governing royal titles is further complicated by the interplay between domestic law and common law precedent. The letters patent issued by the sovereign historically define who is entitled to the style of HRH, often specifying the direct descendants of the monarch or those who marry into the royal family. In the case of Harry and Meghan, the letters patent initially conferred HRH status upon their marriage, reflecting both their proximity to the throne and their ceremonial duties. Prince William's decision to revoke the titles effectively overrides prior letters patent stipulations, highlighting the authority of the reigning monarch and the heir to reinterpret or adjust the application of these rules. Constitutional experts emphasize that such actions, while legally valid, are exceptional and likely to be referenced in future legal discussions regarding the limits and scope of royal prerogative. Potential legal challenges, though unlikely to succeed, have nonetheless been considered by constitutional lawyers and royal commentators. For instance, questions could arise regarding the principle of estoppel, which in common law prevents individuals or institutions from acting in a way that contradicts previous promises or established rights to the detriment of others. Critics might argue that the permanent revocation of HRH titles, particularly for the couple's children, imposes limitations that were not foreseeable at the time of their birth. However, the counterargument is rooted in the discretionary nature of royal titles. As symbolic designations, they are not legally equivalent to hereditary property or statutory rights. Consequently, courts are expected to defer to the royal prerogative and historical precedent, recognizing the sovereign's and heir apparent's authority to manage titles and ceremonial roles within the family. The revocation also raises important constitutional questions about the relationship between the monarchy and the wider governance structures of the United Kingdom. While the monarchy operates within a largely ceremonial and symbolic framework, its actions carry weight in public perception, diplomatic relations, and cultural continuity. The decision to remove HRH status permanently underscores the monarchy's capacity to enforce discipline, maintain hierarchy, and assert control over its internal affairs. At the same time, It highlights the tension between private family matters and public accountability, as the royal family occupies a dual role, both a private institution and a national symbol. Constitutional scholars have noted that such decisions must balance personal discretion with the broader implications for public trust, legitimacy, and the perception of fairness. The Sussex's case is particularly significant because it includes the children, Archie and Lilibet, who were born into royal proximity and initially conferred the HRH style by marriage and convention. By permanently revoking these titles, Prince William establishes a legal and constitutional precedent that the granting of royal styles is subject not only to the discretion of the sovereign or heir, but also to future reassessment based on adherence to protocol, duty, or perceived conduct. This raises complex questions about intergenerational rights, identity, and the intersection between private family decisions and constitutional principles. Experts suggest that this could influence future decisions regarding other junior members of the royal family and shape public expectations regarding transparency, fairness, and adherence to institutional norms. From a legal perspective, the revocation also intersects with issues of intellectual property, branding, and financial arrangements. Members of the royal family who retain HRH status often benefit from certain protections and privileges, including the use of their titles in charitable, commercial, and philanthropic endeavors. Removing these styles can affect the branding and marketability of individuals, particularly those like Harry and Meghan, who have developed high-profile media and charitable engagements. Legal advisors have observed that while these changes do not directly impact contractual rights, they carry indirect implications for financial negotiations, public perception, and the couple's ability to leverage royal association in their independent initiatives. The permanence of the decision also distinguishes it from historical precedents. For instance, when King Edward VIII abdicated in 1936, he relinquished certain titles, but the decision was framed within a constitutional and personal crisis that differed from the Sussex's circumstances. Previous revocations or adjustments have often been situational, reflecting temporary considerations or specific misconduct. In contrast, Prince William's action codifies a lasting structural change within the royal household, signaling that future deviations from protocol, especially for senior members and their offspring, may be met with similarly decisive measures. This has prompted constitutional scholars to reassess the parameters of royal authority, the balance between tradition and discretion, and the potential impact on succession, titles, and ceremonial duties. Internationally, legal observers have noted the broader ramifications for constitutional monarchies within the Commonwealth. While the HRH style is primarily symbolic, it carries cultural and diplomatic weight that can influence public perception and engagement with the monarchy. By permanently revoking titles, the UK monarchy sends a message about authority, hierarchy, and the consequences of straying from established norms. Commonwealth nations may interpret this action differently, but the underlying legal and constitutional principles reinforce the sovereign's and heir apparent's prerogative to maintain the integrity of the institution, enforce rules, and ensure clarity regarding ceremonial and symbolic roles. Social and psychological considerations are also relevant in the legal context. The revocation of titles has implications for identity, recognition, and the formation of social roles within both the family and public spheres. Legal scholars and psychologists alike have observed that titles are more than mere labels. They confer a sense of belonging, status, and legitimacy. Removing them can have long-lasting effects on personal and familial identity, raising questions about duty, loyalty, and the interplay between individual autonomy and institutional expectation. While the law recognizes the prerogative to grant and revoke titles, it must also contend with the human dimension of these decisions, acknowledging their profound impact on those affected. The decision is further complicated by media scrutiny and public opinion, which indirectly influence the legal and constitutional context. As Harry and Meghan continue to engage with global media, publish memoirs, and participate in philanthropic endeavors, their public visibility contrasts sharply with the formal restrictions imposed by the revocation. Legal advisors must consider the potential for reputational disputes, misrepresentation, and defamation claims, ensuring that the formal exercise of prerogative does not inadvertently create grounds for legal contention. Constitutional principles demand that the exercise of authority remains consistent, transparent, and defensible, particularly when challenged in the court of public opinion. In addition, the decision highlights the evolving nature of royal law and practice in the 21st century. The intersection of tradition, family dynamics, media influence, and public expectation requires careful legal consideration. Experts emphasize that while prerogative powers remain substantial, they are increasingly subject to scrutiny, both domestically and internationally. The Sussex's situation serves as a case study in the modern application of ancient traditions, illustrating how legal authority, constitutional discretion, and personal conduct converge in high-profile, symbolic decisions. The permanent revocation of HRH titles also sets a potential precedent for other members of the royal family who may step outside accepted protocols. Junior royals, distant cousins, and future generations must now navigate a landscape in which titles are both privileges and conditional responsibilities. Legal commentators suggest that this decision may be referenced in future letters patent, ceremonial guidelines, and institutional documentation to ensure clarity regarding the expectations, rights, and limitations associated with royal styles. It formalizes the principle that the monarchy retains the authority to enforce hierarchy, discipline, and conformity to institutional norms, regardless of familial closeness or public opinion. In conclusion, the legal and constitutional ramifications of Prince William's decision to revoke Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's HRH titles are extensive and multifaceted. The decision draws on centuries of royal prerogative, established conventions, and statutory frameworks, while simultaneously charting new territory by permanently removing titles for the next generation. It raises questions about fairness, precedent, identity, and the balance between personal autonomy and institutional. The news of Prince William's permanent revocation of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's HRH titles ignited a storm across the United Kingdom and reverberated globally. Within minutes of the announcement, major news outlets, social media platforms, and online forums were flooded with reactions, speculation, and heated debates. This chapter examines the spectrum of public response, the role of traditional and digital media in shaping perception, and the broader societal implications of this unprecedented royal decision. Understanding the public's response is crucial to comprehending how the monarchy interacts with contemporary culture, opinion, and media ecosystems, as well as the pressures that influence both perception and policy. In the United Kingdom, reactions were immediate and polarized. Royal enthusiasts and traditionalists praised the decision as a necessary step to maintain the dignity and hierarchy of the monarchy. Commentators argued that by permanently revoking the HRH titles, Prince William reinforced accountability, discipline, and adherence to royal protocols. Social media feeds were flooded with comments lauding the heir's decisiveness, with hashtags like #RoyalIntegrity and #TitlesMatter trending across Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Supporters framed the action as a bold assertion of responsibility, a move to protect the institution from perceived misuse or exploitation of royal privileges. Editorial columns in leading newspapers echoed similar sentiments, framing the revocation as a restoration of order and respect within the royal family. Conversely, critics argued that the decision was harsh, punitive, and emblematic of outdated traditions that fail to accommodate modern realities. Advocates for Harry and Meghan pointed to their charitable work, media transparency, and personal challenges as mitigating factors that should have warranted more leniency. Social media campaigns, some organized and coordinated, labeled the move as a royal betrayal and public humiliation. Hashtags such as #HRHinjustice, #SussexExile, and #LetThemBe trended alongside online petitions demanding a reassessment of the decision. Media outlets highlighted emotional interviews with royal experts, commentators, and biographers who suggested that the move could deepen rifts within the family and fuel ongoing public scrutiny. Internationally, the news resonated across the Commonwealth, the United States, Europe, and Asia. Media coverage in Canada, Australia, and New Zealand emphasized the symbolic nature of the HRH titles, connecting the story to broader debates about monarchy, modernity, and institutional relevance. American outlets, particularly those focused on celebrity and entertainment, framed the story as a dramatic unfolding of royal intrigue, often comparing it to previous royal scandals and controversies. Global audiences, less constrained by historical understanding of British royal traditions, largely focused on the narrative of exile, familial conflict, and the public struggle for identity and recognition. Television segments, podcasts, and online discussion panels dissected the implications, with experts debating whether the revocation represented a fair assertion of authority or an unnecessarily punitive measure. The media frenzy extended beyond traditional news outlets. Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube became platforms for both commentary and advocacy. Viral clips of commentators debating the decision, analysts explaining royal precedent, and animated visualizations of the monarchy's hierarchy drew millions of views within hours. Memes and satirical content further amplified public engagement, often framing the Sussex's loss of HRH status in humorous or critical ways. Analysts observed that the rapid circulation of these digital narratives contributed to a feedback loop, influencing public perception and adding pressure on both the monarchy and the Sussexes to respond. One of the most significant aspects of public reaction was the emergence of nuanced discussions about privilege, duty, and generational expectations. Opinion pieces and social media threads questioned whether the revocation represented a broader commentary on the role of junior royals in the 21st century. Some argued that the decision served as a cautionary tale, signaling that deviation from established expectations, even by high-profile family members, would not be tolerated. Others suggested that the decision underscored the tension between private family autonomy and public symbolism, highlighting the monarchy's ongoing struggle to reconcile personal freedoms with institutional responsibility. Royal correspondents noted that the revocation's timing intensified its impact, coming shortly after previous Sussex controversies, including media appearances, memoir releases, and charitable initiatives. The decision was perceived as a decisive turning point. Analysts observed that public opinion was influenced not only by the formal announcement, but also by the narrative framing provided by the media, which emphasized drama, emotional stakes, and historical comparisons. Headlines such as Sussex is exiled forever and HRH titles gone for good contributed to a sense of finality and heightened emotional engagement, reinforcing the perception of a monumental shift within the royal family. Public sentiment also reflected generational divides. Older audiences, more familiar with traditional royal practices and historical precedent, tended to view the decision as necessary for maintaining decorum and legacy. Younger audiences, more attuned to social justice, personal autonomy, and media narratives, were more likely to perceive the decision as punitive, overly strict, or emblematic of an inflexible institution. This generational lens added complexity to discussions about monarchy, tradition, and societal relevance, revealing that public reaction was not monolithic but multifaceted and dynamic. Celebrity opinion further fueled public interest. High-profile figures, commentators, and media personalities weighed in, amplifying discussion across multiple platforms. Some expressed sympathy for the Sussexes, emphasizing the emotional toll of losing HRH recognition and the symbolic marginalization of their children. Others praised the decision, framing it as a responsible assertion of hierarchy and family integrity. The involvement of public figures lent both legitimacy and visibility to the discourse, bridging the gap between traditional royal commentary and popular culture, and ensuring sustained attention to the story over weeks rather than days. Financial and economic considerations emerged as part of the media analysis. Analysts highlighted that loss of HRH titles could affect branding, charitable donations, and media partnerships for the Sussexes, raising questions about the intersection of public roles, personal enterprise, and institutional privilege. Media reports emphasized the symbolic weight of titles and public perception, suggesting that the loss of HRH status might influence audience trust, marketability, and engagement with Sussex initiatives. These discussions framed the revocation not merely as a ceremonial adjustment, but as a decision with tangible financial and social ramifications, reinforcing its significance in both personal and public spheres. Social scientists and psychologists contributed to the discourse, analyzing public reactions through the lens of group dynamics, status signaling, and identity. Surveys indicated that many people projected their own values and beliefs onto the situation, with royal titles serving as a symbolic touchpoint for broader discussions about fairness, privilege, and authority. Experts noted that the Sussexes' high-profile media presence intensified emotional reactions as audiences vicariously experienced tension, exclusion, and familial conflict. This added depth to public discourse, making the story both relatable and emotionally compelling, while also reinforcing the monarchy's role as a mirror for societal values and conflicts. Memorable quotes and soundbites from the media and public figures further shaped the narrative. For example, one prominent royal analyst remarked, "This decision sends a clear signal. Royal privilege is not guaranteed by birth alone. It must be earned and maintained." Another commentator observed, "The inclusion of the children in this revocation is unprecedented. It redefines how the monarchy approaches succession, recognition, and ceremonial roles." These statements were widely circulated, cited in news articles, and replayed in broadcast segments, amplifying their influence on public perception and sustaining engagement with the story. Global social media metrics reflected the intensity of the public reaction. Within hours, online engagement metrics surpassed millions of interactions, with video clips, commentary threads, and opinion polls trending across multiple platforms. Analysts observed that the combination of visual media, emotive storytelling, and real-time public engagement contributed to an unprecedented amplification effect. News cycles extended for days, with journalists, commentators, and content creators dissecting every angle, from historical precedent to emotional impact, ensuring that the story remained in public consciousness well beyond the initial announcement. In the United Kingdom, public opinion polls revealed a split in perception. Approximately half of respondents expressed support for Prince William's decisive action, citing the importance of maintaining hierarchy, protocol, and institutional integrity. The other half expressed sympathy for the Sussexes, emphasizing personal hardship, media scrutiny, and the implications for their children. Commentary suggested that the decision would likely influence long-term public perception of the monarchy, especially in relation to transparency, fairness, and adaptability in the modern era. The polarized response underscores the complexity of public engagement with royal affairs and highlights the delicate balance between tradition, authority, and public expectation. The media frenzy also had political implications. Members of parliament and government officials, while careful to avoid overt commentary on private family matters, were aware of the story's impact on public sentiment, tourism, and national image. Analysts observed that the monarchy's visibility and relevance intersect with cultural diplomacy, public morale, and international perception. Consequently, the public reaction to the HRH revocation carries indirect influence over political discourse, national identity, and the role of symbolic institutions in contemporary governance. Throughout this intense period of media coverage, the Sussexes themselves maintained a degree of measured response. Statements released through official representatives emphasized personal dignity, commitment to charitable work, and respect for the monarchy, while also asserting their independence. Media outlets reported on the delicate balance they were attempting to strike, acknowledging the significance of the revocation while positioning themselves as resilient, principled, and forward-looking. Analysts noted that these communications were crucial for shaping public narrative, mitigating reputational damage, and asserting agency in a story largely dominated by institutional authority and media framing. In conclusion, the public reaction and media frenzy surrounding the permanent revocation of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's HRH titles reflect a complex interplay of tradition, authority, identity, and modern media dynamics. The story captivated audiences both domestically and internationally, provoking intense debate, emotional investment, and widespread engagement. It highlights the monarchy's enduring symbolic power, the influence of media in shaping perception, and the intricate relationship between private family decisions and public discourse. By examining the spectrum of reactions, from traditional support to the revocation of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's HRH titles sent shockwaves not only through the public and media, but directly into the Sussex camp, prompting immediate strategic planning and legal consultations. Within hours, senior legal advisors representing the couple were mobilized, analyzing the official documents, royal correspondence, and precedent to assess potential recourse. This chapter delves into the Sussexes' response, their calculated public statements, and the intricate legal strategies they employed to challenge the revocation and protect their rights and interests, as well as the broader implications of their counteractions for royal protocol and public perception. Harry and Meghan's initial response was carefully measured, balancing a need for public acknowledgement with legal prudence. Representatives issued a statement emphasizing respect for the monarchy while expressing disappointment over the decision. The wording was deliberate, underscoring loyalty and family ties while leaving room for future negotiation or challenge. Analysts noted that this approach sought to avoid immediate confrontation while signaling that the Sussexes were prepared to take decisive action if necessary. In essence, the response aimed to demonstrate restraint, dignity, and strategic foresight, a calculated balance between emotion and legal positioning. Behind the scenes, Harry convened an emergency legal briefing with a team of top UK and US attorneys. Their goal was to examine the legitimacy of the revocation process, scrutinize any procedural irregularities, and explore avenues for legal redress. Questions considered included whether revocation of titles for minors, such as Archie and Lilibet, fell within the legal authority of the reigning monarch or whether it required broader parliamentary consultation. Legal experts debated whether public statements or actions by royal officials could constitute defamation, misrepresentation, or undue harm, potentially providing grounds for counterclaims. This meticulous preparation underscored the seriousness with which the Sussexes approached the crisis and revealed their readiness to engage at the highest levels of legal scrutiny. Media outlets closely followed developments, reporting that the Sussex legal team had already drafted multiple contingency plans. These ranged from formal appeals to royal legal advisors to private negotiations for reinstatement or compensation. Analysts noted that the team's approach mirrored high-profile corporate legal strategies, reflecting Harry and Meghan's awareness of both the symbolic and financial stakes involved. Their advisors emphasized maintaining control over the narrative, ensuring that public statements were strategically released, and carefully timing communications to maximize leverage and minimize reputational damage. Publicly, the Sussexes utilized their media platforms to convey subtle messages of resilience and independence. Social media activity, philanthropic announcements, and appearances in charitable initiatives all served dual purposes, reinforcing their public persona as committed humanitarian figures while indirectly responding to critics who framed the revocation as punitive or unjust. Observers noted the careful orchestration of timing, tone, and messaging, suggesting that every public move was evaluated for potential legal or reputational consequences. By maintaining visibility without overt confrontation, the Sussexes sought to assert moral authority, retain public support, and signal readiness for legal action if negotiations failed. Legal commentators highlighted the unprecedented nature of the case. The revocation of HRH titles, particularly for children, had limited historical precedent, making legal strategy both complex and delicate. Questions arose regarding the interpretation of royal letters patent, the scope of authority granted to the sovereign, and potential intersections with human rights law. Attorneys consulted by news outlets emphasized that Harry and Meghan's team faced significant challenges but were leveraging procedural nuances, historical ambiguity, and public opinion to strengthen their position. This combination of legal argumentation and strategic communications represented a sophisticated approach to a high-profile constitutional and familial dispute. Within royal circles, the announcement and subsequent Sussex response created tension. Advisors to King Charles and Prince William reportedly debated how to manage the situation, balancing institutional authority with potential public backlash. Leaks to the press suggested internal discussions about whether compromise, dialogue, or legal pushback would best preserve the monarchy's image. The Sussex response, particularly its legal preparedness and media-savvy positioning, shifted the dynamic from unilateral decision-making to a complex negotiation landscape. Analysts observed that the monarchy now faced a dual challenge, defending traditional prerogatives while navigating a highly visible legal and public relations contest. As part of their countermeasures, the Sussex legal team explored potential claims regarding emotional distress, reputational damage, and procedural overreach. Psychologists and communications experts were consulted to document the impact of the revocation on family members, particularly the children. These findings were intended to support legal arguments while also informing public messaging. By combining legal, psychological, and media strategies, the Sussexes aimed to build a multifaceted defense that addressed both formal authority and public perception, reinforcing their position in a dispute that was as symbolic as it was procedural. International attention to the Sussexes' counteractions intensified within days. Media outlets reported on potential negotiations, leaked legal documents, and insider commentary from royal correspondents. Public interest remained high, with social media metrics tracking sentiment shifts, hashtags trending in support of the Sussexes, and online polls gauging public opinion on fairness, family dynamics, and royal protocol. The sustained attention amplified the stakes, making each statement, legal motion, or media appearance consequential for both the monarchy and the Sussexes' global image. The Sussexes' approach also highlighted generational differences in navigating institutional conflict. Harry and Meghan, leveraging their familiarity with digital media, global audiences, and strategic communications, contrasted with the monarchy's more traditional and procedural approach. This intergenerational dynamic underscored the evolving nature of public influence, showing how modern royals can mobilize legal and social tools to assert autonomy while managing reputation. Analysts noted that this evolution reflected broader societal trends, where visibility, perception, and strategy often influence outcomes as much as formal authority. By the end of the first week following the revocation, Harry and Meghan had established a clear multi-pronged strategy: legal review and potential appeals, calculated public messaging, continued visibility through philanthropic work, and careful management of media relations. Each element reinforced the others, creating a coherent and resilient response designed to protect personal rights, public image, and family interests. Observers noted that the Sussexes' measured approach contrasted sharply with the initial shock and decisiveness of the royal announcement, setting the stage for ongoing negotiation, potential legal confrontation, and sustained public engagement. In summary, the Sussexes' response to the HRH revocation illustrates a sophisticated blend of legal acumen, strategic communications, and public relations management. By balancing restraint with assertiveness, the couple positioned themselves to challenge the decision while maintaining moral and public credibility. Their actions underscore the complex intersection of royal protocol, media influence, and modern legal strategy, demonstrating how high-profile figures navigate unprecedented institutional conflicts in an age of instant global attention. The chapter sets the stage for subsequent developments in negotiation, public perception, and the ongoing tug-of-war between personal autonomy and institutional authority. The revocation of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's HRH titles did not remain confined to the walls of Buckingham Palace. Within hours, the news exploded across traditional media and digital platforms, igniting a global conversation that spanned continents and time zones. Headlines blared across newspapers, websites, and social media feeds, often accompanied by dramatic imagery of the couple looking solemn during past royal events. Analysts, royal commentators, and social media influencers weighed in, dissecting every possible implication of the decision. The story became a cultural phenomenon, blending elements of scandal, family drama, constitutional debate, and human interest. In the United Kingdom, reactions were intensely polarized. Royalist publications hailed Prince William's decisive action as a necessary reinforcement of tradition and protocol, emphasizing that titles carried responsibility and privilege that could not be selectively retained. These outlets framed the decision as a moment of institutional clarity, portraying the monarchy as upholding its principles in the face of external pressures. Op-eds discussed the legal implications of revoking the HRH status, exploring historical precedents, and comparing the situation to previous instances where royal privileges were challenged or rescinded. The narrative suggested that the move reinforced the monarchy's ability to self-regulate, while setting a cautionary example for future generations. Conversely, tabloid coverage leaned heavily into sensationalism, portraying the decision as harsh and unprecedented. Headlines emphasized the shock, betrayal, and emotional impact on Harry and Meghan, often referencing the public's sympathy for the couple. Social media became a battleground, with hashtags such as #HR. International public opinion polls revealed a nuanced landscape. In countries with strong historical ties to the monarchy, a majority of respondents acknowledged the authority of Prince William's decision while expressing concern about the personal toll on Harry and Meghan. In nations considering or actively pursuing Republican governance, a larger proportion viewed the action as evidence that royal traditions may be outdated or inflexible. Across all regions, the story sparked discussions about accountability, tradition, family dynamics, and the balance between personal autonomy and institutional loyalty. The decision also prompted diplomatic commentary. While most Commonwealth leaders refrained from formal statements, some subtly acknowledged the public interest in the matter. Discussions centered on the symbolic importance of royal titles, their relevance in contemporary society, and how such high-profile decisions might influence public trust and engagement with the monarchy. Analysts suggested that while the revocation was primarily a domestic matter for the United Kingdom, its ripple effects would continue to be felt throughout the Commonwealth, shaping conversations about identity, governance, and cultural heritage. In the United States, media coverage framed the event as part of a larger narrative of Harry and Meghan's public struggles. The story was portrayed through the lens of personal resilience, public scrutiny, and the couple's efforts to assert independence. Analysts emphasized the contrast between the symbolic loss of titles and the couple's continued ability to command global attention, philanthropic influence, and media presence. Commentary often highlighted the media frenzy surrounding the couple, reflecting a broader fascination with the personal lives of royals and the dramatic interplay between privilege, authority, and personal choice. The global reaction also demonstrated the enduring fascination with monarchy as both a cultural institution and a narrative framework. The revocation of HRH titles for Harry and Meghan became a lens through which audiences examined broader themes: the tension between tradition and modernization, the pressures of public life, and the balance between authority and compassion. Across continents, the story sparked debate, curiosity, and analysis, reinforcing the monarchy's ability to captivate audiences and provoke discussion, even when specific actions are primarily symbolic. In conclusion, the international reactions and Commonwealth implications of Prince William's decision were far-reaching and complex. From public opinion and media coverage to diplomatic commentary and scholarly analysis, the revocation of HRH titles served as a catalyst for global dialogue about monarchy, tradition, and the responsibilities of high-profile families. Across multiple countries and cultural contexts, the story resonated on emotional, political, and symbolic levels, highlighting both the power and the fragility of royal influence in the modern world. This chapter underscores the intricate interplay between local decisions, global perceptions, and the cultural significance of monarchy, offering a window into the challenges and consequences of navigating public life in an interconnected, media-saturated world. The revocation of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's HRH titles is not only a deeply personal and symbolic matter, it also carries profound legal and constitutional implications that ripple across the monarchy, the royal household, and the broader governance structures of the United Kingdom. This chapter explores in detail the intricate legal frameworks that govern royal titles, the precedent set by Prince William's decision, potential challenges that could arise, and the constitutional questions this unprecedented move raises. Understanding the legal and constitutional dimensions provides clarity on how this action fits within the larger structure of monarchy, law, and national governance, while also highlighting the delicate balance between royal authority and public accountability. At the heart of the matter is the legal authority vested in the reigning monarch and, by extension, the heir apparent. The HRH designation, or Her Royal Highness, is a style that carries ceremonial, social, and symbolic significance. While it confers no formal political power, it embodies prestige, recognition, and membership within the inner circle of the royal family. The grant and revocation of such titles are governed by a combination of royal prerogative, statutory provisions, and established conventions. Prince William, as the Duke of Cambridge and heir to the throne, has traditionally exercised influence over internal family matters, especially those relating to titles and ceremonial roles. In exercising his authority to permanently revoke the Sussex's HRH styles, William acted within the bounds of precedent, yet the permanence of the decision, extending to the couple's children, marks a historic departure from typical royal practices. Royal prerogative allows certain decisions to be made by the sovereign or, in certain delegated circumstances, the heir apparent, without parliamentary approval. This prerogative includes matters such as the granting of peerages, the conferment of honors, and the use of royal titles. Historically, revocations have been rare and often temporary or situational, typically in response to political scandal, abdication, or misconduct. The Sussex's case differs fundamentally in that the revocation was framed as both permanent and inclusive of the next generation, setting a new benchmark for how royal authority can be exercised within family hierarchies. Legal scholars have noted that while prerogative powers are broad, their application in this context must still consider long-standing principles of fairness, duty, and precedent, particularly given the public and media scrutiny surrounding the couple. The constitutional framework governing royal titles is further complicated by the interplay between domestic law and common law precedent. The letters patent issued by the sovereign historically define who is entitled to the style of HRH, often specifying the direct descendants of the monarch or those who marry into the royal family. In the case of Harry and Meghan, the letters patent